welcome to the first day, the first event on this year's Swindon Festival of Literature, or rather, the Swindon Festival of Literature online. Now, thanks everyone for joining us. We do hope that everything is well where you are. We're both pleased and grateful that human ingenuity, cutting-edge science, and digital technology make it possible for this show to go on, well, at least online. Today's guest author has written a beautiful book, beautiful to read, beautiful to hold, and beautiful to behold. It's called The Nightingale, Notes on a Songbird, and it's the kind of book you both want to own and give as a gift. It looks like this. It's tremendous. I almost don't want to let go of it. It's terrific. It tells facts, it tells stories about a bird whose song has inspired musicians, writers, and artists around the world. Our guest author will be joined by a guest interviewer who herself has been known to sing like a nightingale. Please join me in giving a Swindon Festival of Literature welcome to guest interviewer Linda Lee and passionate conservationist, renowned prize-winning musician and folk expert, our guest author, Sam Lee. Welcome, Sam. Welcome, Linda.
No relation, by the way, in case anyone was thinking this was a bit of nepotism going on here.
How do we know? How do we know?
There may be some distant connection. Sam and Linda, we're really pleased that you're both able to join us, at least online. Would that it had been live in our lovely town, Swindon. And Swindon in spring, they speak of Paris in the spring, but Swindon in spring is lovely too. In fact, have either of you ever been to Swindon, either in spring or at any other time?
Well, I live here and I wait eagerly for spring every year. I go and look for the first little flowers coming through, from the first shy dog violets to the beautiful celandine that is profuse outside my door. And I listen for the first blackbird. So it's a very exciting time in Swindon here.
Thanks, Linda.
Over to you, Sam.
Well, funny enough, I had an amazing experience. Back in about 2005, I lived in the West Country, and one of the things I looked forward to most at that time as a new to folk music was to go and do May Day in Padstow in Cornwall, and this was something for a few years I'd been getting ready for, and I'd planned it for the 1st of May in 2015, and a few weeks before I got my letter to call me up for jury service at Swindon Crown Courts and the day of jury service was the 1st of May and I was livid because it's like Christmas Day, it's like Passover, everything, all the great high holidays put together, May Day, and I had to be in Swindon Crown Courts. Anyway, so I went and did my public duty. I missed May Day out with the folks. It was cancelled, you know, within 10 minutes of getting there. So I suddenly found myself in Swindon on May Day, and I went for an incredible walk in the countryside around Swindon and actually picked up a recently roadkilled baby fallow deer, which I took home that day and I skinned and butchered. It was one of the first time I'd ever done it on my own. It was this amazing May Day gift. So I'm really grateful actually for that moment and discovering your countryside around.
That's absolutely wonderful, Sam. I mean, but for the fact that you had to go to court, on the first day of May each year, the festival starts with a dawn chorus overlooking Swindon outside with song, with poetry, and with stories. So next time you come to Swindon in May Day, if you're not in Padstow, it will be for that and not to go to court.
Great.
We'll make sure of that. Okay, we better get back to the topic, which is this book.
Yes, and I have a copy here. It is the most beautiful book.
Okay.
Family, you've created a wonderful book, and as Matt says, it is a joy to hold, even before reading the text. The illustrations are really stunning, and this book, it draws us into this wonderful, amazing but disappearing world of the nightingale. So I first came across you about 5 or 6 years ago as a folk singer and a song collector, and you had an important mission at the time. But what we'd like to know is, how did you come to write this book?
Oh, well, I'm going to be honest, I resisted writing this book as much as I could. And I, having never considered myself a writer, was kind of petitioned by Penguin so hard that eventually I just sort of had to relinquish and thrown into it. And I wrote it very quickly. It was only over around 5 or 6 months, and of course the first few months were not exactly with full application. So I pushed it out rather fast in self-imposed quarantine, only about a month or two before the real quarantine started. So that's kind of how it came to be. And actually it was a great gift, because I realized the years of working with nightingales had meant I had so much that I wanted to say, and actually it was a wonderful way of putting it into an order and into a sense of like trajectory and chronology and the personal and the ecological, and actually being able to create for myself a sense of order of and relationship between how the nightingale exists in so many domains.
Yes, that's right. And because you refer to the nightingale as being your teacher and guide. If you could tell us a bit about your journey and the inspirations that you had along the way, from child of nature to whatever else you became or have or are.
Well,
We'd love to hear more about your journey.
Well, I grew up, as you can hear the sirens behind me in the bright lights and big city of London, in central London, Kentish town. I'm a city kid really by birth, but actually luckily parents that took me out into the nature and realized very quickly that I was a child of nature, even if I was sort of, I was born on the hard pavements. So that was really I was really sort of allowed to flourish in that space, and went off camping as a kid with a wonderful organization who really taught me about the importance of play and inquisitiveness and curiosity in nature, and the ingenuity of the natural world and how to work with nature. And that turned into a teenager and a young adult that taught wilderness work and nature connection, and entered into the sort of the school of nature immersion, and finding ways of teaching and guiding with people to bring nature into our regular practice, which is something that is still very important for me, and was in many ways my main artistic training. I didn't study music, but I then found myself in folk song, and really the nightingale came to me through folk song first. That's where his voice and his character became so prominent. But it took me till about 2015-16 till I was introduced to the bird himself, where I then started this incredible journey of being as apprenticed, as it were, to this bird, and going to meet him in different places and times.
Apprentice to a nightingale. That's wonderful. I'm just wondering, what is it that makes the nightingale song so magical? I mean, we have a lovely blackbird that sings here, and that's very enthralling, but what is it that makes the nightingale song so special to you?
This is such an enormous question, and how the nightingale sits for me is very different to other people as well. There's a combination. The blackbird song is exquisitely joyful. I'm not going to, I couldn't live without blackbird, or the song of swifts, or the turtle dove turring. But the nightingale, by nature of his time of night, the song that I go and hear is, usually from about 11 p.m. onwards through the night, this nocturnalness, the decadence of his decoration, his decoration of silence, that I always think is so, the artistry of his singing, and also the character of the bird. How much I identify with him as and I speak about the males, it's the males that sing. I don't know the females so well, but very shy bird, and a bird that's not much to look at, that's very reserved and hidden away, and then suddenly emerges in grandiose kind of expression. I really identify with that as a sort of introvert artist who has to come and go public and be big and expressive, and then actually just wants to hide away and be very shy. It's sort of, and just be quite boring. I
I
really,
don't think that.
I identify with the nightingale in that sense, and I think that his appeal in that respect, but also the cultural weight of how when I hear the bird sing,
Mm,
I feel that sense of ancestry that has been
mm,
inspired and inquired after this bird. And I
yeah.
can't help but feel like I'm stepping in the lineage of such an enormous appreciation that needs collectively to be reappraised and reapproached and encouraged and yeah,
Mm.
enlightened for today.
Well, throughout the book, there seems to be a poignant parallel between the loss of nightingales and the loss of the song carriers, who were the travelling people. This is part of your journey because you became really interested in the songs of the travelling people that were disappearing fast. Um, so, and as I was reading the book, I was experiencing strong waves of feeling that we now have a name for, thanks to you in the book, solastalgia,
Mm.
a sense of homesickness for a place that is no more, and the distress at the loss of a sense of place. Yeah, so I just wonder if you'd like to say a little bit more about this, about the parallels between the nightingale and the song carriers.
Mm. Well, that word solastalgia, coined by Albrecht, and I've forgotten his name, Anthony Albrecht's father, who's a wonderful ecological philosopher, and it's a neologism of this idea of nostalgia and solace, and this idea of longing for something that doesn't exist, a home that doesn't exist anymore, a world, a place that has been erased. Connected very much to a wonderful Greek word that's used in the Greek song, which sings a lot of nightingales, of xenetia, and this idea of longing for home. And I think those qualities are something that are so prominent within the negative space around being with these birds and being with these old traditional singers, these source singers as I call them, because I know that every time I return back to a traveller site, a gypsy site, or an Irish or Scottish traveller community home, there would be such a sense of loss of those elders who carried the culture, who were no longer alive since the last time I visited, and that sense of erasure is so similar when I go back to a place where nightingales had sing, sites that I ran my Sing with Nightingales events, the concert series that I do, and the birds had ceased to return, and this idea of that emptiness, and knowing that anyone who came there would be unaware that something so rich and powerful existed, and this idea of the shifting bass line that go, oh, it's so pretty and all these lovely birds, and actually I'd heard it with something so monumental. It's like going back, it's like those those legendary venues in cities with these, where all the great concerts had that some developer had knocked down to build a block of flats, and you never know that this venue was there.
Oh.
People who knew it would remember those seeing Bob Marley and the Wailers, or Jim Morrison sing at that famous venue that's gone. No song to happen there anymore.
Because song is also, is a powerful way to attract attention and spread the message. And in April 2019, I was sitting on Waterloo Bridge with Extinction Rebellion for the climate action. And there was a little stage, and you got on the stage and you started talking about the disappearing birds, the turtle doves, or no, rather how the turtle dove had come back, and also listening to nightingales. And it was lovely because you then sung the turtle dove song, and it was almost like we were transported. You somehow managed to create an atmosphere on that stage where we were transported to some wilderness somewhere where the turtle doves and the nightingales existed, and it was a very special moment, very, very poignant. Is it possible for you to sing a little bit of the turtle dove song to take us back to that moment?
Yeah, I mean, the folk songs are so, you know, they're designed. They exist for the purpose of transporting people into a place of.
Really, no, it really did. It was amazing, and it had such a feeling of it. It was sad, but it was also slightly hopeful as well. It was a strange mix of feelings there.
So I'll précis this by saying that the song "The Turtle Dove" is a very old song, a song older than the word extinction, and yet it sings of the turtle dove's demise,
Yes.
unaware that right now the turtle dove is the next bird to go extinct in this country in probably about 15-20 years. So they are declining so fast. Despite the amazing efforts of Isabella Tree, who was your guest last year or the year before, they're kind of, you know, going to be functionally extinct in this country fairly soon. And this old song, almost speaks of it, of that. It's so that the idea of disappearance. Fare thee well, my turtle dove, fare thee well for a while. I'm not going to sing all of it because it's long, but I'll just sing a few of the later verses that for me are very significant. And it starts with about the crow actually in this verse, but it is about the turtle dove. The crow that's black, my little turtle dove, will change its colour white if I prove false to the songbirds that I love. The noonday shall sound as night, my love. The noonday shall sound as night. The hill shall fly, my little turtle dove, and the roaring billows burn. If I prove false to the mother that I love, or I a traitor turn, my love, or I a traitor turn, the stars shall fall, my little turtle dove, and the rocks melt to the sun. If my poor heart shall suffer me to fail, till all these things be done, my love, till all these things be done.
Oh, so beautiful. Oh.
Thank you.
And you say that's one of the, as far as you know, is it the oldest, or one of the oldest songs that?
It's not the oldest. It's maybe 200, 300, 400 years old. We can't carbon date these songs.
No.
Probably around the kind of 1700s it came out. It's a romantic lament, but the imagery in it that it uses is suddenly takes on such a powerful new concept. This idea, the burning billow, the burning hills. This idea of that we are experiencing wildfires on British soil right now, and the rocks melting to the sun, the idea that the sun becomes so hot that the ground just becomes scorched. It sort of tells of all these extraordinary biblical things that we are going to be part of our lives, and our British lives, as well as, you know, our foreign neighbours. So it's extraordinary how the kind of premonition that there is in these songs, but they're powerful things, folk songs, in the knowledge and the wisdom that they hold, and, you know, the tellings that they offer. It's dramatic, but it may also be hopeful as well.
I was going to ask you, do you feel there is some hope?
It depends what we're hoping for.
Yes.
we have to accept that there is going to be great changes in the world around us over the coming decades, and my children and my children's children will never experience the things in this world that I had the great privilege to experience, in the same way that I will have never experienced the things that my grandparents' generation maybe experienced, that level of profundity and those places where that ecological diversity and richness exists. They're getting smaller and smaller and fewer. But I'm hopeful because the opportunity to turn things around is so available, and we have such an opportunity for hope.
Can we be can we rewild ourselves? Yes.
Yes, and rewilding is a complicated word for many people, but I think nature recovery
is a better way.
Can be such I love rewilding, you know, what Izzy has done, and the Feshy Estate, Pulfson and others, and so many brilliant projects. Wild East, that is connecting up these oases of us petitioning people to give 20% of their land to nature. You know, it's user-led, and it also could potentially be a financially wonderful model of how we can derive an income and a life with the land, not in opposition or in extraction. So I am hopeful.
With the will, it can be done, can't it? It
yeah.
can, I think. Getting back to the book for a moment, which is what we're here for. Sam, how do you sing with nightingales? How do you do it?
You just put your lips together and blow. That's how does
yes, I mean, because you have a response, they respond to you and you sing with them. How does this happen?
It happens in both the most simple way and also the most kind of unbelievable way, that they're there and they're ready and waiting and open to your song.
Yes.
I think for me, the thing that's most important is you don't just go along to a nightingale and rock up and, you know,
wait, sing.
Yeah, and just like, oi mate, here. It's you have to approach the bird with such a sense of respect. It's like going to hear a wise elder, a holy man, and for you to enter into that dialogue, that discourse, there's such a humbleness that you are in service to the nightingale, and he is the leader.
That's right.
And it's his time, and it's his way, and it's his home. So I think there's an enormous amount of modesty and restraint that one has to go, and and it's an act of devotion, singing with the bird. It's the closest thing for me that I have to, and this sounds a little bit evangelical, but to a religious experience. The closest that I have to feeling that I am connected to something bigger and more powerful that hasn't happened for me in the churches and synagogues and holy spaces that I've been to. But the nightingale time is sacred time.
And there seems this dialogue that you have. I mean, it's I can't imagine what it would be like to have that moment where you're feeling like you're in some sort of communication with the bird by the sound, by what I was reading in the book. You know, it looked so. There really was a moment where
there's a dissolving, that membrane, that intellectual sort of wall that we humans have built up between ourselves and nature, and it's a slow build wall. This is a wall that has grown over centuries of small little severances. Bit by bit have we become parted in that Cartesian way of somehow we can create a world where nature is not necessary. And when you're with the nightingale in the darkness, not being able to see your hand in front of your face, deep in a thicket, sometimes, you know, you'll crawl into these incredible places. It's like going back into a womb, but that membrane between us and the natural world is so porous that you suddenly remember that I am Nightingale, Nightingale is me, and that sense of interconnectedness feels so obvious because we've done 2 million years of evolving in accordance with these creatures, with birds, with nightingales and other species, that we come from the same crucible, and we are brother and sister. Yeah.
Yes, beautiful. I mean, I'm referring back to the book again. There was a tearful. Well, I felt a bit tearful when I was reading in the book about how you brought nightingales back to Berkeley Square, and I will never think of that song in the same way again after reading what you said. So, could you actually just perhaps tell people how you did that?
Well, you mentioned earlier Extinction Rebellion, who is an organisation that means many different things to many different people, and I'm a great supporter of what they have achieved, not always how they've achieved it, but very much the change that they've made. And the April of 2019 was a world-changing time for awareness of extinction and ecological decline. And those 2 weeks of rebellion where central London was taken over and you know, chaos, jeopardy ruled, was a very powerful time for me, stepping into that place of understanding my call for defending nature and what my tools were. And the Berkeley Square action was something that I dreamt up I've a long time wanting to bring nightingales back to Berkeley Square, but could never afford it because it's £15,000 an hour to hire the square. But suddenly it's like, oh, well, XR, they just turn up, they just advertise, and everyone just arrives, and you have your gathering, and who needs to pay for hires? What an absurd thought that I would feel so beholden to that. And so it ended up becoming this gathering on the 29th was the last day of the Extinction Rebellion 2 weeks, and it was the closing ceremony of that period. And I invited people to live stream from their mobile phones Nightingale's song. So the whole square filled. It was about 1,500 people filled up with Nightingale's song. And I rewrote the famous Berkeley Square song, and we sang it, handed out sheets of it, and people read it from their phones, and everyone sang over and over this song. And we had ceremonies and rituals, and Satish Kumar, the wonderful soul and soil writer and elder statesman, came and gave a beautiful speech, and there were musicians everywhere. I sent musicians all across the square to play, and people to read out prose about nightingales and nature. And it was just this total loving of us just going, we've had this hard fight for nature, and now we're just going to celebrate the species, the extinct species, the going extinct species, and let's just send them our love, because that's ultimately sometimes all we can do, but also the most powerful thing we can do.
Oh gosh, fantastic finale for that. Well, I think we're coming towards the end now. Only a little bit of time left, and I was just wondering, looking to the future, have you had any thoughts about what you would like to be doing next, or where it's going? What you? I know you have a child now to take into consideration, but have you got any dreams and hopes for the future, or plans?
Well, the Sing with Nightingales project, which the book has sort of come out of these concert series that happen throughout April and May, are growing. We have our online ones that I think you viewers will be able to watch retrospectively. That for me is so important about building up my guiding work of taking people out into nature. I do the Turtle Dove pilgrimage to Isabella Tree's Knepp estate in June, and to the rewilded Cairngorms to sing for the salmon in June. So there's a lot for me, a lot more going out into nature, taking the music with people, with groups, pilgrimages. I'm doing chalk stream pilgrimages. So this for me is such an important act about us getting out, rewilding the songs and ourselves into the land. I love gigging. I have concerts coming up throughout the summer. I'm hoping there'll be bits and pieces reappearing, and maybe I'm thinking about writing something as well. But I don't want to say too much about that just yet.
But I think the song and the experience in nature, I mean, it's song and nature. It's such a profound way of experiencing it. That's just wonderful. So I think we are actually, we've had our 40 minutes possibly, and I'm wondering if Matt's going to come back in. He is.
That's very nice of you to welcome me, Linda, and it's lovely to hear Sam talk of elder statesman Satish Kumar, who was at this literature festival in his second year, and he's the editor and founder of the Resurgence magazine, which writes brilliantly about this sort of thing. And we've also had another elder statesman and national treasure, David Attenborough, here. And listening, I don't want to compare you to the greats just yet, Sam, but hearing you talk the way you do with such love and commitment to these things, and to write a whole book about one single bird is tremendous. And you're on the shoulders of giants, and you're in their footsteps too, and power to your elbow, and power to many other things in you, Sam. This book had me smiling quite often. Not only did it have me feeling informed, like I love the contents page. Folks who want to read this book, it's seductive beyond belief, like chapter 1, Decorator of Silence. Chapter 5, Out of the Fire into the Shadows. Chapter 6, Spring Comes, Celebrations, Ceremony and Seduction. Chapter 7, Ballads, Broadsides and Berkeley Square. It's alliterative, it's literature. And then and then finally, Standing Up for Our Birds. And then as I read on, he quotes Mahler, and he says, as Mahler says, tradition is tending the flame, not worshipping the ashes. Brilliant for people who get over sentimental about traditional things rather than realizing it's about bloody well keeping things alive, not looking at dead things. And then when you write about going to look for nightingales, you talk of stepping into the night, and then you tell really interesting stories like high-tech clothing makes too much noise, where old-fashioned ragged wool and cotton, it makes no noise. And I think he's right, bloody hell, he's right. I remember that, the crackling of the sun. But then Sam also writes, this is a review of your book, by the way, Sam. Sam also writes very knowledgeably about all sorts of things. Why do birds sing? Whole section on that. The name of the nightingale in 43 different languages. Brilliant. You can impress your friends with it. It's full of good stuff like that. But I did want to, and it's got songs in it as well. It's got fantastic illustrations. But I wanted to ask you, Sam, towards the end you say, will the next generation hear the nightingale? What do you reckon?
That's up to the listeners and our generation to decide. I can't predict the future. And we have an opportunity to make sure they do. I think if the next generation don't have nightingales there to listen to, we have a lot to say for our behavior and our actions and how we failed. But I believe we will succeed, and we will bring these birds back, and that we may see numbers and population grow, and it'll be better for us if that is what happens. So yeah,
absolutely, Sam. And even though this book is called The Nightingale, Sam also sings the praises of other birds, which is very good of you, because there are a lot of other birds. Look at the bird behind me there, poor little blue-tit, who doesn't get a mention. The blackbird does, and other warblers do. But I found it very informative. Now I want to give you two an opportunity to address something that isn't in the book, and that is this name that you have in common. We have a couple of minutes. Do either of you know why you're both called Lee and you're not related?
Where's your Lee from, Linda?
Well, I don't know. I mean, all I know is that it was a common name among the travelling people. And I'm a very restless person. I always want to keep on the move. And so I'm wondering if, that's how mine came about. What about you?
Well, I will admit that it has become it's been very useful as being a Lee when in the Gypsy Traveller community, because often they go, oh yeah, you're a Lee, you're one of us, and what I don't tell them is that actually my great-grandparents, when arriving from Eastern Europe as Jewish refugees, under the name Lipnitsky and Levenstadt and others, but changed their name at the border for quick assimilation, and Lee seemed an appropriate and naturalizing name. So I'm not been Lee for many generations.
But it's a very good choice anyway.
Quite agree.
The work
I'm proud to be a Lee now.
Lee's, Lee 1 and Lee 2, or Lee 1 and Lee 1.
I was there first.
You've done us proud. From the Swindon Festival of Literature, Linda Lee, thank you very much. And most of all, our guest author, Sam Lee, the Swindon Festival of Literature, thanks you very much.
Definitely going to give it. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Linda.